Hello, this is Sharon from SAS Statistical Programming. So far in this session, we've combined data sets based on the order of the observation in the input data sets. But sometimes we need to combine observation from two or more data sets into a single observation in a new data set according to the value of a common variable. This is called match merging. When we match merging, we need to use the merge statement to combine data sets rather than the set statement to combine data sets. This is a general form for match merging. Data and then output SAS data set, then followed by merge statement. So we have SAS data set 1 and SAS data set 2, and by descending variables. So the output SAS data set names the data set to be created. And SAS dataset 1 and SAS dataset 2 specify the dataset to be read. And the variables in the by statement specify one or more variables whose values are used to match observations. Descending indicates that input dataset are sorted in descending order. That means from largest to smallest numerically, or reverse alphabetical for character variables, by the variable that is specified. If we have more than one variable in the by statement, descending applies only to the variable that are immediately follows it. And also please note, each input data set in the merge statement must be sorted in order of the values of the by variables, or it must have an appropriate index. Each by variable must have the same type in all data sets to be merged. And we cannot use the descending option with the index data set because index are always stored in ascending order. During match merging, SAS sequentially checks each observation of each data set to see whether the by values match, and then writes the combined observation to the new data set. Here is example code to match merge data set A and B by num. For dataset A, we have observation 1 to 3, and for dataset B, we have observation 1 to 4. This is the combined dataset after match merging. So we can see for observation 1 and 2, they are matching observations. For observation 3, it is from dataset A and has missing value for variable B, which is from dataset B. And for observation 4, it is from dataset B and has missing value for variable A, which is from dataset A. And basic dataset match merging produces an output SAS dataset that contains value from all observation in all input dataset. We can add statements and options to select only matching observations. And if an input dataset doesn't have any observation for a particular value of the by variable, then the observation in the output dataset contains missing value for the variable that are unique to that input dataset. For example, the year 1992 is from table 1 and has missing value for variable y, which is coming from table 2. And also in match merging, often one dataset contains unique value for the by variable, and other datasets contains multiple values for the by variable.
Now let's look at the SAS program for this tutorial. First, I use two proc input procedure to bring in two Excel data file. This one, the Excel data file is score data ID partial score 4. And then the output SAS data set from this procedure is score data underscore P. And then for this second proc input procedure, the input Excel data file is called score data ID. And then the output SAS data set, I call it score data. Now let's run the first one to bring in the first Excel data file. So this data set, it has total 6 variables, has name, gender, still ID, and also has 3 score variables, score 1, 2, and 4, and total it has 7 observations. In this data set, the variable still ID will be used as a common variable, or we can call it by variable, to do the match merging later. Alright, so let's go back to the code window And let's run the second proc import procedure to bring in the second Excel data file. This is the score data, and it has total 6 variables. It has name, gender, and stool ID. And also it has 3 score variables, score 1, 2, and 3. And in terms of observation, it has total 11 observations in this data set. So let's go back to the code window. As I mentioned earlier, in order to do match merging later, first we need to sort the data. So that's why I include 2 proc sort procedure here. The first one, we sort the data, score data underscore P, by stool ID. So student ID is the by variable. And for this one, because by default, SAS will sort the data in ascending order of the by variable. So that's why I don't need to add anything else here. So this proc sort procedure will sort the data, score data under P using the by variable stool ID and in ascending order. And this second proc sort procedure, the data, I'm going to sort the score data, this data, and also sort it by ascending order of stool ID. So let's run those 2 proc sort procedure first. Okay, let's go to the log window. So here, after we run the proc sort procedure, so SAS will let us know procedure sort used for this data set, and also for score data, procedure sort also been used for this data. And then in this data step, I'm going to use merge statement to do the match merging for those 2 original data sets. So the output SAS data set, I call it MA. And then this is the merge statement. So in the merge statement, I include the 2 data set that we want to merge. So one is score data underscore P and one is score data. So those 2 data sets already been sorted in ascending order of the by variable stool ID. And this is the by statement. So the variable is stool underscore ID. And then there's a run. So this data step procedure will merge the 2 data set by stool ID in its ascending order. So let's run this data step program. So this data step program gives us this output SAS data set is MMA. So in this new data set, total we have 7 variables. Name and also gender, stool ID, and 4 score variables, score 1, 2, 3, and 4. So all the variables from both original data set are included in this resulted final data set. And in terms of the observations, so this output data set has total 12 observations. Let's go back to the code window. So in order to look at the data set on one page, comparing the resulted data set as well as to original data set, I include 3 proc print procedure here. So the first one, I print out the data MMA, which is the outcome data set from match merging. So I call it match merging ascending. And then in the second proc print procedure, I print out the score data under P. I call it partial score data. And then in this proc print procedure, I print out score data. I call it score data. So let's run those 3 proc print procedure. All right, so this table, the first table is match merging results. And this is the partial score data, and this is the score data. Those 2 data sets are the original input data sets So this partial score data, it's already been sorted by student ID in ascending order. So it's from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in this data set, it has 6 variables, score 1, 2, 4, and also name, gender, student ID. So score 4 only in this partial score data, but not in this score data. And also in this data set, there is one observations occupy 2 rows. The name for this observation is Shang, and the student ID for this observation is 3. So you can tell for this line, the score 4 is missing for this observation. And for this line, the score 4 is not missing, but the score 1 and 2 is missing. So those 2 lines has same student ID and same student name. So this is like one student has 2 rows of information. So the score data has total 11 observations, and it has name, gender, student ID, as well as score 1, 2, and 3. So in the score data, it has score 3 as variable, and this score 3 variable doesn't in this partial score data. All right, so let's look at the match merging data set. So in this table, in this data set, it contains all the variables from both input data set. So name, score 1, 2, gender, and student ID, those 5 variables are in both input data set. And score 4 only in partial score data, and score 3 only in score data. So when SAS do match merging, so it match each observation using bivariable student ID. And we can see student ID here is in ascending order. So for each student ID, when SAS do the match merging, it try to merge multiple records into one single observation. So for example, for observation 1, from partial data, team, it has score 1, 2, and gender, student ID, and score 4. And for observation 1, as student name as team, it has this. So in the resulted match merging data set, we have 1 observation for student team, and student ID is 1, and it has score 1, 2, 3, and 4 for this observation. So basically, when SAS do the match merging, it merge 1 record from partial data and also 1 record from score data, and then merge those 2 records into this final 1 observation appearing in this output match merging data file. And it's same for all other observations here. So one thing I want to mention here for student Shang, its student ID is 3. It has 2 records in this output merge data. That is because this first record for this student is merged from this record from partial score data, as well as this record from score data. So that's why this first record of Shang, it contains score 1 and 2 as non-missing value, as well as score 3 as non-missing value. So score 3 non-missing value, it comes from the score data here, this one. All right, so the second record of Shang is come from merging the second record here from partial data. So for score 1, 2 is missing, but score 4 is 45. So for this record, 1, 2 is missing, but score 4 is 45. And also merge this record with this record. So this record has non-missing value for score 3, 56. So that's why for the second record of Shang, it contains non-missing value for score 4 and score 3. All right, so let's go back to the code window. All right, so also in this following programs, everything remained the same as previous programs, except here I sort the two input data in descending order of stu ID. So that's why I need to put descending here and also descending here. And also when I merge the two data set, the bivariable here, I also need to put descending here. So this is the only difference, because SAS by default will sort the bivariable in ascending order without specifically requirement. So let's run those programs. Let's see the results. So those three tables showing the result from merging the two input data set in descending order of stu ID. So just look at stu ID. It's now from the biggest number to the smallest. And also the two input data set also sort in the descending order of stu ID here. All right, so let's go back to the code window. So this concludes this tutorial. In this tutorial, we talk about how to use merge statement to match merge two data sets. All right, so this is it. Thank you for watching.